The man to the side of me is a hoop head, but his expertise extends well beyond basketball. It is Aaron Torres donning the Fox Sports 1 hat. He is a Fox Sports Radio host. You can catch him on Saturday nights, 8 to 11 p.m. Pacific on FSR with the stinking genius Arnie Spanier. Anytime we bring up his name, you know we're going to talk about him. I can't wait to ask Aaron about what it's like working with him, and we'll discuss that on this interview. I'm Bryan Fenley. I get to work with Aaron from time to time. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley as an anchor. Of course, Aaron_Torres. And you've got a new website out, Aaron, AaronTorresOnline.com. You probably got to be busy putting that together.
Yeah, that's been around. I use it, I do a lot of gambling stuff and as time goes on, and we'll talk a little bit about it. I mean, I was at foxsports.com for years, and, I don't write as much as I used to. I still have a couple freelance writing jobs, but I started this website to get some gambling picks up, to have a landing space for my podcast. So it's me, it's nothing, it's not, anything too crazy, but, I like, me as well as anybody, man. I stay busy, radio show, 3 podcasts a week, good guests, interviews like this with you. So I'm staying plenty busy, man. I'm staying plenty busy.
Aaron, his Rolodex is as large as a giant yellow book. I know nobody knows what those are anymore, but Aaron knows people. And so when you look at his podcast and you see the guests that he brings on, the guy, he draws the best. And I don't even know how I drew him on this show.
I got a few I'm working on right now. Say a small prayer to the podcast gods. I got a few that would blow your mind if I actually pull it off. So we'll see, man. I don't even know how I pull off half the stuff I pull off, but I do it.
Well, you have a charm about you. And look, there's not one formulaic way to get in the business and to make it where you are today. Who has helped you the most to get to where you are at Fox Sports Radio?
Who's helped me the most at Fox Sports Radio specifically, or just in general?
I guess in general, that facilitated the opportunity for you to become integrated in the lineup and be used and get into the door?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple people. I mean, I did a lot of stuff before I ended up at Fox Sports Radio, but I was a regular guest, started really about 2017, the year that Lonzo Ball was at UCLA. I was a guest on Colin Cowherd's show. So I got to give so much credit to his former producer, Sam Batesh, for giving me a chance, a good friend of mine, former Fox Sports Radio producer, Greg Dewey, Colin himself, because if it wasn't for Colin, I don't know if I would have ever gotten in that door. And obviously through working with Colin, I got to know our boss, Scott Shapiro, who's an incredible mentor and friend and person that I lean on into this business. And, somebody that we were talking about a little off the air is Cindy Katz. And I want to give her a special shout out too, because for people who don't know, really tragic. She recently passed away. And she was probably, honestly, sincerely, one of the most beloved people that I've ever met. I mean, you never met anybody that had a bad thing to say about her. But when I got on with Colin at the beginning, Greg Toohey, which is one of Colin's producers, I think you might be having him on soon. Greg told me that there was a talent booker for the network, and if I ever want to be on any of the other shows, that he could connect me, and I am forever indebted for that, because what ended up happening was I got connected with Cindy. She put me on all the other shows. I went out with Jason Smith, Mike Harmon. They called me the LeVar Ball Whisperer because, like I said, that was the year Lonzo was at UCLA, and LeVar was, of course, making headlines. And I had known LeVar for years. I still talk to him from time to time. And so Cindy really set me up with a lot of the shows. But really, this is the crazy story, Brian. I mentioned I was working at foxsports.com, and they ended up shutting down the website. And it was nobody's fault. We weren't doing anything wrong. Hate to brag, I was one of the most productive writers that they had. But the management decided they wanted to go in a new direction. And in all sincerity, probably 25, 30 people had lost their jobs on that day. But what's crazy about it, and I think I've told you this story before, 2 or 3 days before, I had been coming on for about 6 months on Fox Sports Radio to do college basketball hits, and this was now June, so I did a lot of NBA draft stuff. And kind of when the NBA draft wrapped up, I texted Cindy and I said, I just want you to know, if you ever have an opportunity to host, I would love the opportunity. And,
Sure.
call me, for an overnight shift. I didn't know what a 2 to 6 shift was or anything like that. But I said, if it's overnight, if it's 2 a.m, whatever, just let me know. And, she said, look, Aaron, you're great on college basketball. We've never really heard you much on anything else, so I can't make any promises. And she was very nice about it, sincere about it, all that stuff. But so then, so the story goes, this is a true story. The day we find out that foxsports.com is shutting down, we had an idea for a while that it was coming,
Okay.
but we weren't sure. And then we were thinking, and then it didn't happen. And so we're like, maybe we might survive all this. And it shuts down. We find out on a Monday. And so I find out, I know it's coming. The news is out. I haven't gotten the official call yet. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go have lunch, have a few beers, relax. I'm not going to, as of about a couple hours from now, I'm not going to have a job. And so I shut off my phone. I had lunch with a friend, had a great time. And when I turned on my phone, I had two voice messages. The first one was from foxsports.com letting me know your job no longer exists, Aaron. And the second one was from Cindy saying, hey, we have an opening July 4th with Mike Harmon. At the time, it was 8 Pacific to 11. They've since added an hour. Jason was taking the night off. And my first shift, it was the literal when one door closes, another one opens. And so from that day forward, I've been part of the Fox Sports Radio family. I give Scott and Cindy so much credit for just giving me these opportunities. I did a bunch of fill-ins throughout that fall. And then February of 2018, the Stinking Genius and I are on Fox Sports Radio. We've been on pretty much every Saturday since.
What's it like working with that Stinking Genius? You guys seem to have a great rapport and a nice sibling rivalry kind of feel from time to time when you talk about sports topics.
I describe it as, the young, hip, cool son arguing with his crazy grandpa at Thanksgiving dinner. But no, man, Arnie is, and honestly, man, I listened to the interview you did with him, and people tell me all the time, the Stinking Genius is a living legend. Like, I've had people that know that I do radio with him say, you're so lucky, you're so blessed. He was my icon. He's the reason I got into this industry. And, so what I would say about Arnie is it's always an adventure. He's always prepared. He does radio 7 days a week. He has an old school approach of, we stick to the general topic. We never go too deep. We never go too wide. But I've learned a ton from him, man. And by the way, all the stories that he told on your podcast and all the other ones, I've heard him a million times.
Yes.
Hot Tub with Ben Maller. And I don't think you asked him about Brett Favre, but there's a Brett Favre story. But no, man, he's always incredibly prepared. He's always, the thing that I love about him, honestly, Bryan, more than anything else, He's always fired up. It's 11 at work. When we come on air, it's 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night. And for some guys, girls, they just wouldn't want to be working that shift. And you come on and you would think that we're doing, a national drive time show at 3 p.m. I mean, he takes the job that seriously. And it's fun. I have a blast. There's always a couple times where I laugh. I think I make him laugh sometimes too. And I've enjoyed working with him. And I sincerely mean I've learned a ton working with him as well. I think he's made me a better host, a better thinker, a better whatever. And it's been a blast working with him. As crazy as he is, and like any other radio partner, he does drive me crazy sometimes, but he's a good guy.
You can tell the chemistry is there. The listeners can tell. I can tell. You can follow Aaron on Twitter, Aaron_Torres. Check out his website, AaronTorresOnline.com. Lots of great podcast interviews. Recently had Ryan McGee on, so everybody check that out. Ryan is with ESPN. Also, Aaron, you did bring up that interview I did with the Stinking Genius. You can check out my YouTube channel if anybody's interested in watching that, and certainly gives more of a background into what it's like working with you and his reign at Fox Sports Radio as far as Arnie Spanier. Aaron, you have, I think in the last 6 months, and I could see this coming, your platform, your voice is just growing. It's astronomically growing. How do you feel like it's gained so much more traction? I mean, at least from my perspective, just seeing your engagement on social media, seeing the amount of new followers you have, why has this year been one of your breakthrough years?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. And, a couple of things. One, obviously, it's a crazy time in our country, and I don't want to be unsympathetic to people who are going through struggles right now, because I understand, I know people who lost jobs. I know people, all sorts of stuff. So I don't want to be unsympathetic. But for me, Bryan, it has been an advantageous time. And I think there's kind of two different things that have really happened. I think one, and it was piggybacking off a lot of what you've done with your UCLA podcast and now this one, is, I saw you buzzing, you're about to get guests, and I'm not even kidding. It really inspired me to say, you know what, everybody across this country is home, and there's no reason that you shouldn't be going out and pursuing people, because everybody's got free time. Everybody's looking to pass some time. And so I look at, most of my guests, my primary sport is college basketball. So it's a lot of college basketball guests, Rick Barnes, head coach at Tennessee, Patrick Patterson, who plays for the Los Angeles Clippers. We talk mostly about his college career at Kentucky. Mark Pope, head coach at BYU, who played in the NBA for about a decade. Sure. I'm trying to think of who else I had on. It's been such a crazy summer. I lose track.
Mick Cronin. You had Mick Cronin on.
Mick Cronin, UCLA. Archie Miller, Indiana. It's a great point. And so, what I really tried to do is early on in this pandemic is, the first few weeks, I think we were all scrambling, trying to figure stuff out. And then really after about 2 weeks, I said, you know what, it's clear we're going to be here for a while. Let's take advantage of this time. I don't know if I've told you this story, but I've told it other places. But I remember about week 2, week 3 of the pandemic, when we're all trying to figure out, okay, what is sports going to look like when we come back? I read an article, and it was prepping for my radio show with Arnie on Saturday, where Scott Boras, the baseball agent, he was doing an interview, and this was before we knew what baseball would look like, and he came up with this crazy proposal. We start in June, we end in December, we play a neutral site World Series, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, I threw together a 60-page proposal and sent it to Major League Baseball. And that was a light bulb moment for me, Bryan, because I said, if this guy, Scott Boras, who has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, can use this time productively, there's no reason that I can't. And so that allowed my mindset to change to be productive in this time frame. And then I think the other thing, I said there was two things. I think people are starting to understand that whether you like me or whether you don't like me, and I think this makes for a good radio voice and personality as well, I believe what I say. I don't think I do hot takes. I know some people think that I do. And I think the Big Ten thing really kind of changed my career arc to some degree, because I think I was maybe just about the first person out there. I mean, even before they canceled the season, I was saying this doesn't make sense. You can't have, at the time, there was 13 out of 14 campuses were having students on campus. You can't have students in dorms, students in class, and tell me that it's not safe to play football. Now, I give credit to our colleagues, Clay Travis, Dan Patrick. They were on top of this story too, so I don't want to pretend like I'm the only one. But, I just look at it. I was one of the early ones. It was easy 2 weeks ago to say the Big Ten made a mistake. It was tough day one to say that they made a mistake. And I was there day one. And I just said, and for people who are not familiar with my work, I never once said that the Big Ten shouldn't cancel the season. I just said it doesn't make sense for them to cancel the season when they did, without doing like the SEC, pushing the season back, without, there was a million options. And so I think that opened up my work, and I know it opened up my work to a lot of people that weren't familiar with who I was. And I just think it comes from a place of sincerity. It comes from a place of, you might not agree with me, you might disagree with me, but when you hear me talk about whatever topic it is, I think it's pretty clear that I've done my research, I've done my homework, and when I say something, even if you don't agree with it, it's not a hot take. There's a legitimate reason I'm saying the things that I'm saying.
Couldn't tell you how many people are not like you, Aaron, where they feel like they have to have a certain hot take to fulfill a certain brand when it's really not them. And so I think that the intellectual listener can see through that. Perhaps some people are fooled, but you get what you get with Aaron Torres. And I think that's the best way to go, and why your career continues to rise. And what I like about you, Aaron, especially in the last 6 months, is you're a guy that looks for solutions. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's one thing, like, and I don't want to take a stand here, but it's one thing to say, gosh, this year is not what any of us are hoping. But the fact that you use your platform to look at it and make ideas of what we can do to safely play or to have solutions. That's what we need. It's easy to throw your hands up and say, what do we do now? But what I love about you and what you've become great at is finding ways around what's going on, and they're happening. So it's almost like you're predicting the future. And
Wow,
what that's
man.
done, Aaron, is a lot of, like, let's just say a lot of college basketball coaches have seen the work you've
Oh,
done
yeah.
and have reached out to you. Who are some of those that have gone to you and said, man, what you're doing, we really appreciate it. It's very noble of you.
Yeah, I don't want to name names because I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I will say there have been, I'm amazed. I could dozens, and I'll tell you a quick story. Last week, it was, I don't know when this will run, Brian, but it was if you remember, Baylor and Houston were supposed to play in football. 2 games had been canceled. They put a game together in like 5 hours. They're supposed to play, and right before the game gets canceled. And so everyone's freaking out. And, this is proof we should have never come back. This is too soon, blah, blah, blah. And, I put out a couple tweets and I said, all I said was something to the effect of, instead of freaking out, why don't we look at this as a positive? The testing is working. Unfortunately, people are testing positive, but it means the testing is working.
Yeah.
All those narratives about the schools aren't going to keep the kids safe and they only want to play and they don't care about the kids. Well, that's crap because they're canceling these games and costing themselves money. And the kids are going to be okay. And so instead of being negative, let's look at this from a positive perspective. And I had somebody reach out from Baylor that said, thank you. You're the only one. We feel like we're screaming. And the crazy thing that came out from that story, if you followed closely, and it wasn't something that this person told me, it was something that other reporters found out. The players weren't even, it wasn't that the players were positive. It was that the contact tracing had wiped out so many guys that they didn't have enough in one position group, and I don't know what position group it was. So it wasn't even that players were testing positive. It was the contact tracing. And so, literally they couldn't play because they had guys testing negative that weren't eligible to play. And so I had somebody from Baylor just say, dude, thank you for being that voice. We appreciate you just telling the truth, just spitting out facts. And it goes back to what I said a minute ago, Brian, is that, we're obviously living in a divisive kind of crazy world as it is. But I think one thing that I've seen over the last 6 months, whether it's coronavirus, whether it's social justice issues, whether it's, Big Ten football, you just don't get facts from the media anymore. And, I mentioned this, earlier to you before we started. I went to school for journalism. And so I'm not calling myself Walter Cronkite or Woj or Jeff Passan or anybody like that. But I have kind of like the backbone of journalism kind of in my core. And, I look for the truth independent of what my personal perspective is. And so like with the Big Ten stuff, I just was like, this is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. Like the truth doesn't make sense. And I think I was proven right that the decision didn't make sense. And when we got all the facts, when we found out all the details that there was kind of a vote, but not, no coaches were consulted, no medical people were consulted, all of a sudden you realize it's crap. So yeah, I don't even remember where I was going with this, but like, I think that's part of another reason why I've had success is that, I don't always say what's popular because I say what's the truth. But yeah, so to answer your question, yes, I've had so many people. I mean, I've had Power 5 basketball, some of the biggest names in basketball reach out to me. I've had assistant coaches. I've had administrators. I've had other media members just say thank you for just making sense with all this. And it's never to be inconsiderate of people, especially with the coronavirus stuff, that have had the virus or that do have the virus or know somebody that has the virus. But it's like, my personal stance is, Brian, I think I'm a pretty blue-collar guy. I grew up in a normal family, all that stuff. And so I know that there are a lot of people out there suffering that don't have jobs. I know there are a lot of people that have taken pay cuts. And I want us to get back to normal as safely as we can and be able to do it. I think sports is a big part of that. But I think if we can do sports safely, no disrespect, but if our grocery workers and our waitresses and our bartenders can show up to work every day in this climate, football players that are getting tested 3 times a week can play football. I'm sorry. It's just the truth.
Yeah. Aaron Torres, bringing the facts, bringing the reason, and bringing that other side that oftentimes, it doesn't really get spoken about. And people, whether they want to admit it or not, it's important to have two sides. It really is. And I think sometimes we get dominated by one side, but having you come at it, Aaron, without emotion, like that's the thing. It's just concrete. Here's what I think. You're not rushing to emotion, and it's just a very important viewpoint that people need to acknowledge, and people need to follow you. We're going to get you to continue to rise the ranks. Aaron is on Twitter at Aaron_Torres. Big show for him on Saturday, 8 p to 11 p with Arnie Spanier on Fox Sports Radio. Check it out, whatever FSR affiliate you are listening to on a regular basis, or Sirius XM, the iHeart Radio app. Aaron is the guy that you need to follow. I'm Bryan Fenley. Aaron, thank you so much for doing this, man. This was a whole lot of fun, and I really enjoyed your perspective. And obviously, people are going to love the background of where you got to make all this happen.
That was quick, man. That was easy. I thought we were going a lot longer. I'm ready, man.
Well, we got a good 25 in there, 25 minutes.
Absolutely, man. No, it's my pleasure, man. Anytime you need me, I love chatting with you. You and I, we kind of cross shifts on Saturdays at the Fox Sports Radio studios. It's always good chatting with you there, and I love doing this long form. And anytime you need me, is you cycle through the Fox Sports Radio people for a second time. I know you've had so many of our colleagues on this thing on your YouTube channel over the last couple of weeks that you're getting big time guests too now. So I appreciate you having me. And like I said, when you cycle through, just let me know. I'm happy to do it.
I know one question I'm going to ask you next time, Aaron. I saw your tweet last night, and it was on Tyler Hero and how you had the story where he was not really looked at.
I mean, I can tell you the story is the biggest name in basketball right now if you want it.
So, yeah. So I because you've done a lot of work in the AAU circuit, or you've been to a lot of these events. And so you see talent before it becomes headline news. Mm-hmm. Who are some of these guys that you've witnessed that you knew while they were unproven at the time would turn into be stars?
Oh, well, I remember the year Ben Simmons was at LSU. I said he's by far the best player. There's nobody even close. And if you remember leading up into that draft, it was, well, I think Brandon Ingram's going to go number one. And I said, no, there's 0% chance Ben Simmons is going to go number one. So he's a guy that stands out. Trying to think. I mean, I've seen anyone basically under about 26, 25 I've seen. I mean, I saw, Zion, RJ, Marvin Bagley, LaMelo. I mean, I saw LaMelo Ball for the first time when he was in 8th grade. I mean, he was probably 5'1" playing with Lonzo and LiAngelo. I saw your boy Cody Riley pretty early on, who plays at UCLA now. Jalen. I'm just trying to think. I mean, I've seen all these guys. PJ Washington is really good for the Charlotte Hornets this year. So I've seen all those guys. But the Tyler Hero story was there's a lot of big all-star games at the end of the high school season every year, and one of them is called the Nike Hoop Summit, and it's the best players from the United States against the best players from the world. And the year that he was on the team, I was there. It was in Portland. I was governor for an outlet based out of Kentucky. And, he was committed to Kentucky at the time, obviously. And it was crazy because all the good players weren't playing that year. Zion was hurt. He was a part of the Team USA. Romeo Langford was hurt. I feel like somebody else was hurt that I can't remember off the top of my head. But the game comes, Team USA gets smoked. I mean, they get blown out. And Tyler Hero didn't play at all. I mean, he got buried on the bench. And so after I asked the coach in the press conference, and admittedly I was covering it for Kentucky, I did have to ask about Tyler Hero. And I said to the coach, I said, was there a reason that you didn't play him as much? He played the fewest minutes of anybody on Team USA. And the coach's response was, essentially, this isn't an exhibition. We were trying to win the game. Implying that Tyler Hero did not give them the best chance to win the game. And it was funny because two things. One, he was incredible these whole playoffs, but 37 points in Game 4 on Wednesday. But then two, I found the video from that night where myself and another person covering it based out of Kentucky were kind of interviewing him. And we were the only two because he didn't play, so nobody else wanted to interview him. And I asked him, I said, do you feel like you should have played more? And he kind of rolled his eyes and said, yeah, I do, but whatever, it's cool. And you can kind of see that confidence, that swagger, that whatever, that permeated from him last night. You saw that 3, 4, 5 years ago. Like, I'm going to show this guy that he was an idiot for not doing it. I came across another interview today where he was mad because he wasn't named a McDonald's All-American his senior year. And so it's been unreal to watch his rise. He's one that I could have never foreseen becoming as good as he has. But yeah, man, I've seen all these kids, man, Lonzo, Markelle Fultz, Dennis Smith, Bam Adebayo. I'm just trying to think of the guys that were drafted recently. Yeah. I'm trying to think of who else. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but any of the guys, the guys that are going to be in the draft this year, Nico Mannion, guys, Cole Anthony, guys like that. So
yeah. Oh,
that's
man,
tell a hero story.
Stories. I love those stories. You see them before they become big time, and then they turn out big time when not a lot of people thought they would. And shout out to Pat Riley and what he's done with the Heat in finding Tyler Hero and those Miami Heat, man. They are a lot of fun to watch. You're a lot of fun to listen to. Aaron Torres, thanks so much for doing this. So grateful for you and your time.
Pleasure is mine, Brian. I'm glad we did it, man. We'll do it again soon.
Sounds good.